Get the cool shoe shine. I need a gun, cause all I do is dance. I got sunshine in a bag. What does any of this mean? They're phrases that spoke to an entire generation from the mouths of a virtual band. What is a virtual band? I'm glad you asked. This is a beginner's guide to Gorillaz. Gorillaz is an incredible project. Their music predominantly out of the mind of Damon Albarn, who, if you're unfamiliar with, was a singer of 90s Britpop group Blur. If you're still unfamiliar, maybe this will help. A large part of the music Albarn was making for Gorillaz were tunes and influences that didn't seem fit for Blur, giving him a new outlet for this more electronic-based sound. With many bands, there also comes the identity, the image, the branding. That's where artist Jamie Hewlett steps in. He and Albarn had met sometimes throughout the years, including when he interviewed Blur in 1990. By 1997, the two ended up renting out a space together, where the idea to combine both their talents into a cartoon band eventually started to roll. For the first time, we would all meet 2D, Murdoch,
Hi, I'm Murdoch Nichols from Gorillaz. Welcome to my crib.
Russell,
Doing this, man. I'm gonna be jumping you next time you asleep.
and Noodle. And their lore goes incredibly deep. The band was formed by Murdoch, the bassist and problematic character of the bunch, when in an attempt to steal some synthesizers, he crashed his car into the shop, hitting a mentally deficient employee there who went by the name Stewpot. After his arrest, Murdoch was required to perform 30,000 hours of community service on top of supporting the dependent Stewpot for 10 hours a week. During one of these times, Murdoch was pulling stunts in his car with Stewpot to impress some girls when Stewpot was ejected from the car. Giving him a second head wound now, or dent if you will, Murdoch opted to nickname him 2D, and offered him a spot in his new band as lead singer and keyboard player. The two rented out Kong Studios, and Murdoch kidnapped a record store employee named Russell to be the band's drummer. Russell had a rough upbringing, having been expelled from school as a result of attacking his peers while possessed by a demon. He then fell into a coma for 4 years and was freed after his exorcism. It wouldn't be the last time he was possessed, as after all his friends were gunned down in a drive-by, they began to inhabit his body as ghosts. They had hired Paula Cracker, 2D's girlfriend at the time, on guitar. However, she was fired after Russell found her cheating with Murdoch. She was gone, Russell broke Murdoch's nose, and everything was settled. They just needed a guitarist again. After putting out an ad in NME, a shipping crate was delivered to the studio from Japan with the 8-year-old guitar-wielding Noodle inside. The lineup was set in the period in the group's history known as Phase 1. In 2000, the EP Tomorrow Comes Today would be dropped on the world, giving us a sample of what we were in for. Most of these songs would carry over onto the group's self-titled full-length debut the following year. The album, released on Parlophone Records, utilized many featured artists, something that would go on to become a staple of the band's releases. This included Dan the Automator producing the album, and included rapper Del the Funky Homo Sapien and DJ Kid Koala. The three of them had experience together already, having formed the group Deltron 3030 and putting out an experimental hip-hop album of the same name in 2000, which also had Damon Albarn featured on. The group was destined for success. The first single they ever put out, Clint Eastwood, became a huge hit and went on to be included on many Best Songs of the Decade lists. Del's part in this actually came from him experimenting with a book called How to Write a Hit Song, and took him less than 30 minutes to write his part. The album also spawned 3 more singles in 2000, Rock the House, and Tomorrow Comes Today. Gorillaz also featured some digital content with the album, such as wallpapers and videos. This self-titled album was understandably Albarn's Gorillaz work closest to his rock-oriented roots in Blur, as guitars would gradually stop being used in roles as predominantly as they were here in future albums. The work would also be very diverse, with rapping and hip-hop influences like scratching on tracks such as Soundcheck, while also having more rock-based songs like M1A1, the hardest Gorillaz has ever gone on record. The band's debut was a commercial success, peaking at number 3 on the British charts and 14 on the US Billboard, and selling 7 million copies worldwide, including going triple platinum in the United Kingdom, each plaque representative of 300,000 sales according to the British phonographic industry. After this, they would release some compilations, remixes, and singles before the band would take a hiatus and all go their separate ways. The virtual band, that is. 2D bounced around a bit. Russell tried to write his own album, but was too traumatized by his demons and ghosts. Murdoch was arrested in Mexico, and Noodle went back home to learn about her past, finding out she was a secret government super soldier who had had her memory wiped. Crazy stuff. Noodle would go back to Kong Studios and rid the place of zombies that had taken over. She would then write the entire follow-up album by herself and invite all the members back to start recording Demon Days, now in phase 2 of the band. Stepping back into the 3D world, the success of Demon Days was critical to Gorillaz. They wanted to prove that this whole virtual band thing wasn't just some shtick and that they were here to stay. With that goal in mind, Albarn got Danger Mouse to produce the album, and they had a real chemistry. Given this, and the hip-hop influence in Gorillaz as well as their tendency to use features, it only made sense that rapper MF Doom was featured on a song, November Has Come, as he and Danger Mouse were in the process of making their collaborative album Danger Doom at the time. The album was a huge success, selling 8 million copies worldwide and going 6 times platinum in the UK. Helped by hits like Feel Good Inc., Dare, Dirty Harry, the double A-side single Kids with Guns, and El Mañana, it was nominated for 5 Grammys, winning Best Pop Collaboration with Vocals for Feel Good Inc. The album peaked at number 1 on the UK charts and number 6 on the US Billboard, was included on many publishers' Best of Year lists, and was met with overall positive reviews, though praise of Demon Days has only gone up more since. Gone from the self-titled era was the rock-based songs, now opting to go further towards pop. Nearly every song on Demon Days feels like a danceable tune. Even the more lounge-sounding Every Planet We Reach Is Dead still has a certain sway to it. This comes despite the album having an overall darker nature than its predecessor. Damon Albarn has described the work as being somewhat of a concept album, with each song representing a different personal demon. In an untraditional twist, as opposed to touring, the group played the album in full 5 nights in a row at the Manchester Opera House, with content from which later being released on both CD and DVD. In 2008, the documentary Bananas was released, which chronicled the Gorillaz from their formation through these first 2 albums. Wanting to take a break from the band after the album and promotion, Noodle was set on leaving after the El Mañana video shoot. She wouldn't get the chance, as while on the Windmill Island, the place got shot down. This was all a big conspiracy as a record executive named Jimmy Manson, with a vengeance against the band, wanted to take them out. Aware of his intent, Murdoch pretended to help him get the villain off their case, saying if they broke up Gorillaz, the two could start a new band together. The plan was for the floating island to be shot down, and Jimmy, who was hiding in the windmill, would assassinate Noodle and escape via parachute. Unbeknownst to Jimmy, Murdoch didn't leave him a gun, and locked him in the windmill so he died in the crash. But Noodle was never found. The rest of the band all went their separate ways again. This would be the start of the band's 3rd phase. Murdoch eventually settled down on an island in the ocean, made up entirely of garbage, and named the place Plastic Beach. It was there he began putting together Gorillaz' 3rd album. Murdoch would also have 2D gassed and brought to Plastic Beach against his will and force him to help with the album. Though there was no Noodle, Murdoch retrieved some of her DNA at the scene of the Windmill Island wreckage and created a cyborg replica of her. Russell could also not be found, so a drum machine sampling his sounds was used for the album. Russell, meanwhile, still battling his demons, seemingly left a suicide note behind and swam into the ocean, where he would physically change from all the pollution and toxicity, and furthermore run into Noodle, the real Noodle. There was supposed to be a music video for the song Rhinestone Eyes that showed the two arriving at Plastic Beach, though the project was unfortunately scrapped. The album, Plastic Beach, saw the band dig themselves even further into the electronic sound, while now also adding more of an island or tropical vibe on a few songs. Its entire premise is based around themes of the environment and waste, inspired by all the discarded plastic Albarn saw in the sand at a beach while he was recording Seagulls. 3 singles were put out to promote the album, being Stylo, Super Fast Jellyfish, and On Melancholy Hill. Rhinestone Eyes and To Binge were initially supposed to be singles as well, however the non-album track Donkomatic was selected instead. The album was the first of Gorillaz to be solely produced by Damon Albarn, and featured many notable collaborators such as Snoop Dogg, Mos Def, Lou Reed, and Bobby Womack, as well as the Swedish group Little Dragon on the track Empire Ants. Plastic Beach debuted at number 2 on both the UK and US album charts, and while it was met with generally positive reviews, its sales paled in comparison to its two predecessors, selling 1.5 million copies. While on their Escape to Plastic Beach tour, Damon Albarn, 2D, made an entire album solely on an iPad, with the exception of a few instruments. The Fall, as it was named, was all improvised and put together on the American portion of the tour, hence the influence in many of the track titles. It included various samples from objects around him in the rooms he was in at these times, and with very little additional production, had a more minimalist sound to it. It was released digitally on Christmas in 2010, then had itself a proper physical release in 2011. The only single released was the double-sided Revolving Doors and Amarillo, though Phoner to Arizona did get its own music video to promote the album. The Fall peaked at 12 on the UK charts and 24 on the American, and is the lowest selling Gorillaz album at 180,000 copies worldwide. Going back in time a bit, up until 2003, Albarn was still working with his previous group Blur while also doing Gorillaz. When Blur seemingly broke up at that time, it allowed Albarn to focus full-time on Gorillaz, what was originally his side project and now became his front-running group. Blur played a few reunion shows in 2009 in the middle of his work on Plastic Beach. He eliminated any hopes of a full Blur return, saying there was no way he could do both bands. This was now unfortunate for Albarn, as after releasing a Gorillaz singles compilation in 2011 and a single in 2012, he and artist Jamie Hewlett had built tension between themselves. This came as a result of the band, the virtual band, having less and less of a role at live shows, with all the features and background musicians being brought in every time, encompassing the whole stage. And now, Gorillaz seemed like they were done for. Eager to be working again, Albarn with Blur would tour in 2013, as well as by himself in 2014, to promote his solo album Everyday Robots. During this time, he and Hewlett had worked out their differences and agreed to give Gorillaz another try. They started at it again, and by 2015 the band's 5th album was being recorded. Where were we? Oh, that's right. There was an attack on Plastic Beach, Murdoch escaped via submarine, Giant Russell escaped with Noodle hidden in his mouth, and 2D was eaten by a whale, setting the stage for Phase 4. Murdoch was captured and held prisoner, and forced to work on the next Gorillaz album. Mistaken for a whale, Russell was harpooned off the coast of Japan and wound up on a shore in North Korea. The leader there believed Russell to be the Korean equivalent of Godzilla, and kept him on display as an attraction until starvation shrunk him back down to normal size and he was shipped off to London. Noodle, meanwhile, was lost in the process. She woke up in Japan, accidentally unleashed a shape-shifting demon, decapitated it, then mailed herself to Murdoch in London. 2D had to eat his way out of the whale after it washed ashore. He ended up in Guadeloupe, and from there went home to London. The gang was all back together and working on their next release. The album was co-produced by Twilight Tone and Remy Kabaka Jr., with the intent to sound like a party at the end of the world. To promote the album, Gorillaz made their own festival, Demon Days, where they performed, as did other contributors to the upcoming album, and it also had amusement rides. Also leading up to the release was an augmented reality app Gorillaz put out, where you could interact with the band members. Within this, a listening party was hosted the week of the album's release, where you could hear it in full. Humans would be put out in April 2017, helped by its singles Saturn's Bars, We Got the Power, Ascension, Andromeda, Let Me Out, and Strobe Light, helping the album sell 650,000 copies. There was also a deluxe edition containing 6 more tracks, as well as a super deluxe edition containing 14 additional tracks, resulting in 3 more singles. Humans was noted for its more soul-based and funkier sound than the group's previous works, with a strong R&B influence, and also for its inclusion of various short interludes. It was also infamously recognized for having the smallest vocal presence from Damon Albarn himself across the group's discography. To start Phase 5 of the band, Murdoch was arrested for smuggling. He was framed by a shadow demon, who was also the kingpin of a large crime organization. While he was behind bars, the band would have to hire a new bassist, leading them to recruit Ace, the same Ace who fought the Powerpuff Girls.
Yeah, they're bad!
Miss Keen, why, we're not bad guys. We're here to learn. Just give us a chance. I promise we won't let you down.
Aw, see, girls, you just have to give people a chance.
While the band was touring to promote their new album, Murdoch was planning his escape. He learned from another prisoner where the kingpin that framed him lives and sent Noodle the coordinates. She went on the hunt, and it turned out the kingpin had given up crime a long time ago, and now he's just a simple spa owner. It turned out Murdoch was never even framed, and he was just covering up that he was arrested for unpaid parking fines. The newly released album the band had been touring for, The Now Now, was a project Albarn had been working on in a similar fashion as The Fall, in a sense that it was being written while on tour for Humans. Already being someone who's restless and seemingly needs to work constantly, he explained wanting to get this album out as soon as possible now that Gorillaz was back, wanting to capitalize on them being in the spotlight again. The Now Now did have a much fuller sound to it than The Fall, however, and went in more of an 80s sounding synthesizer-based direction, giving it an awfully funky and fun sound. Also much more unlike The Fall, where the 6 singles released from The Now Now: Humility, Lake Zurich, Sorcerers, Fireflies, Hollywood, and Trance. The album peaked at 5 on the UK charts, 4 on the US charts, and has since sold 330,000 copies worldwide. In 2019, a documentary was released directed by Jamie Hewlett's son Denholm called Gorillaz, Reject False Icons, which followed the band from their reformation and through their past 2 albums. Par for the course, following the album release, the band would again go on hiatus. While on vacation, Noodle would devise a plan marking Phase 6 for the band. The idea was to get parts to create a song machine, and she filled the other band members in on it. With the year 2020 came debatably Gorillaz' most ambitious project, which is really saying something given how much artistic merit the group has displayed. Song Machine, Season 1, Strange Times, would be a web series made up of 9 episodes, or songs that were planned to be released monthly, though this was made more difficult by the COVID-19 outbreak. Along with these episodes were snippets of interviews with the band and their collaborators, known as Machine Bites. Between the episodes, the bites, and the program's theme tune, there were 29 videos uploaded, constituting Season 1. Song Machine Season 1, Strange Times, would be released as an album and included the new book Gorillaz Almanac with it. The album mixes together all the influences from previous Gorillaz releases, with as much rock as we've heard from the group since their debut, and still the funk as well as 80s synthesizer influence heard on the Now Now, while still bringing plenty of pop, electronic, and rapping we've become accustomed to from them. The album was supported by its 9 singles in Momentary Bliss, Désolé, Aries, Friday the 13th, Pac-Man, Strange Times, The Pink Phantom, The Valley of the Pagans, and How Far, the last of which was saved for the deluxe edition of the album. The release peaked at number 2 on the UK albums chart and 12 on the US Billboard, and has sold 200,000 copies worldwide, just shy of its 1-year anniversary. So there you have it. The virtual band has been a mainstay in pop music over the past 20 plus years, and there's more on the way. Word on the street is Song Machine Season 2 is already underway, and that the group has a Netflix movie in production as well. Thank you for tuning in for this beginner's guide to Gorillaz. I hope it was a helpful introduction to the band. It took a lot longer than expected to do because I didn't realize the group's lore was so deep, all of which was studied on gorillaz.fandom.com, and they themselves got the information from various Gorillaz releases in audio, video, and literature sources.
He's never gonna clear that gut. Russell's been texting catering all day and he's coming way overweight.
Let me know your thoughts on the video, the band, their music, and we'll see you again.